Hey guys, so one really common misconception is that you need to be rich to travel the world. I've traveled to every country and I'm completely self-funded. I started to save up to travel when I was very young, and now travel is a huge part of my career. No, my parents did not pay for all of my trips. My mom does have a travel agency though, which has helped teach me everything I know about budget travel. How I afford to travel and how other people can do it for themselves is by far my most asked questions. Thinking about how to afford to travel can be a bit overwhelming if you look at it as one giant price tag. So it helps to break it down into a few different cost areas: flights, accommodation, food, and other forms of transportation. Destination also matters a lot when you're on a budget. So if you are wanting to travel for cheap, it's best to start in places that have a reputation for budget travel, like Southeast Asia, Central America, etc. First of all, let's talk about flights, which are by far the most expensive part of traveling. There are so many amazing resources online that you can check out to compare different flight costs, like Skyscanner and Google Flights. Definitely make sure to shop around and check out a couple of different websites before you book your flights, and also turn on your incognito browsing so that you can avoid cookies that influence the prices of your flights. Another really important tip when you find really cheap airline tickets is to read the fine print. There's a lot of budget airlines that will market a really cheap ticket price and then hide a lot of different fees for luggage or miscellaneous things when you get to the airport. So make sure to look out for that when you're booking your flight. Also, when you fly, make sure to travel during the off seasons. The times when there are the least amount of tourists are when there's going to be the cheapest flights to get to your destinations. Also, flying on holidays like Thanksgiving, Christmas, or New Year's will be extremely cheap in comparison to the rest of the year. It's so smart to be flexible with the dates that you want to travel on, and also I've had the best luck with finding cheap flights when I book at least a week in advance. There's a lot of reasons why I only travel with carry-on luggage, but traveling light always has a way of saving you money, especially when you don't have to pay any fees to check baggage. Since we're talking about flights, I have to mention credit cards. There are so many amazing travel rewards programs out there. One of the best ways that you can start saving to travel right now is by never using your debit card again. Every time you use your credit card, you could be collecting points and miles towards your next trip. This has been such a huge part of my travel hacking experience that I can't even remember the last time I paid real money for a long haul flight. Basically, you can use airline miles for free plane tickets and hotel points for free stays at hotels. This is only the beginning of a very long, in-depth conversation that I'm really excited to have with you guys, because it's genuinely changed my life and the way that I travel, but I'm going to save that for another time. So make sure to hit the subscribe button and I will let you guys know more about my travel secrets in the future. With all of that being said, another great way to save money while traveling, especially if you are not traveling in a hurry, is to avoid flying as much as possible. You can get tickets on buses and trains that take you across countries and even into new countries for a fraction of the cost, and it's a great way to see as much of the country as possible from the ground. The next part of traveling that I want to talk about is the accommodation. I don't stay in Airbnbs too often unless they are ridiculously cheap or an amazing experience on their own. I personally prefer to stay in small, locally owned hotels because it is a great way to benefit the local economy, and usually that's the cheapest place to stay. I also always make sure to find hotels that have breakfast included, because it's basically just having a free meal thrown in as well, which saves me a lot of money on food. For budget accommodation, it's hard to beat be staying in hostels. I've stayed in so many hostels throughout my life, and there are so many amazing perks to them. They're crazy cheap. It's a great way to meet like-minded people. There's usually really awesome locals working there that have great recommendations. And one of the best parts of staying in hostels is that they have a full kitchen. So if you want to save money on going out to eat, you can go to the local market, shop for some really cheap produce and everything, bring it back to your hostel, and you have access to a full kitchen there. And even if you have leftovers from eating out, there's a fridge there where you can store all of your food, and that's been so essential for saving money. The cheapest hostel I've ever stayed at was for $3 US in Guatemala, which even though it wasn't the most luxurious, comfortable place to sleep, I was still just so excited to have the opportunity to explore a new place, which at the end of the day is the most important part. Also, when it comes to accommodation, think about all of your friends and families or friends of friends in different places around the world. Did your best friend in high school move to Italy? Hit her up. Do you have a long-lost cousin living somewhere in South America? It's time to send them a message. Let them know that you're interested in coming to stay or coming to visit them for a little bit. Sometimes these conversations can lead to a free place to stay or a friend of a friend that would be able to host you on their couch or in a spare room, or at least you would know a local, which not only gives you a more in-depth travel experience, but it's also an amazing way to get some tips on how to save money while traveling. If you are a budget traveler, don't forget to utilize social media. Using social media before I even had a following on Instagram was so helpful for finding different people to be my guide around the city or even get some free accommodation from time to time. The next logical travel expense is food. Avoid eating in tourist traps as much as possible. The places where there's a lot of tourists all the time are the restaurants that can serve poor quality food and also charge 3 times as much for it. Definitely try to look for the more off the beaten path restaurants, and you'll find some cheaper places to eat. One thing I almost forgot to mention was to not book any expensive tours ahead of time. If you are traveling on a budget, there is most likely more than enough to see without having to spend the extra cash on entrance fees or guided tours. Another thing that has gotten so popular over the past few years is working while traveling, and I've met so many people who have been able to craft amazing lifestyles on the road. I personally work while I'm traveling because my business is on social media. I do a lot of different sponsored trips from tourism boards, different hotels, or tourism companies that will hire me to travel to different destinations to capture their experiences and promote them online. But don't worry, if you don't want to have a career based in social media, there are still so many things that you can do to work while you're traveling. Au pairing, woofing, teaching English, volunteering at different organizations are great examples of things that you can do to work in exchange for room and board in a different country. And there are so many resources online where you can find out more about how to work abroad. You just have to do some research. If your biggest dream in life is to travel the world, maybe don't spend money on lattes or new clothes. I rarely spend money on anything that is not travel related, and if I do, it's very small because I'd rather spend my money on experiences rather than possessions. I hope you found some of the things in this video helpful. This is the first of many videos on this topic, so let me know if you have any questions or want to hear more about it in the future. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will catch you next week.